Welcome to Elevate, the awareness shift, waking the quantum self. So great to be with you all today. And I've got the delicious Carolann on with me. Welcome, Carolann.
God bless.
Well, a big day, a huge day,
Yeah.
massive. So just before we went live, I said to Carolann, how you going? You all set? And she's like, tells me the news that the gorgeous Charlie Kirk, when I say gorgeous, I really knew nothing about him, has been shot. So we've been talking about it, and I looked online, and like everybody's talking about it. Masses of people talking about it. It's happened. How long ago did it happen? A couple of hours ago? Like it's just happened, right?
1 or 2 Eastern Standard Time. Yeah. Well, they were in Utah, so for me it was 1 or 2 o'clock. So
yeah. So today we're talking about how to maintain a spiritual connection, and it's actually, I don't want to say perfect, but the fact that this has happened and we're talking about that is exactly relevant for this topic, because as you were saying, what do you want to say about how you've been feeling about, this event?
yeah, folks, hop in the chat too. By all means, we love talking to you and hearing from you. The global divisiveness that's taking place, not just here in the States, but globally, is tragically sad. And it's such a disconnect from our spirit consciousness. And it's so tragically sad. And I couldn't help but just feel, and especially as an empath, you immediately tap into like this pain and suffering. And watching all these videos of people crying on the internet, and everyone is just tragically sad. He was martyred. He truly was martyred for his cause. And you're going to tell us your experience too, that you were able to tap into him, but
straight away.
Yeah.
So this is the topic we're talking about. So I should introduce myself for people that don't know me. Hi, people online. I'm KAren Swain, and Carolann, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I am Carolann Idarola from Ethereal Encounters Unveiled.
Yeah, and I obviously am a teacher of deliberate creation and a psychic and a medium and a channel, and have the podcast show ATP Media, Accentuate the Positive Awakening and Expanding Consciousness. But this is a new show. It was Carolann's idea, and I'm doing it once a week, and she's coming on once a month with me to have discussions and Q&A rather than interviews, because we both do the interview shows. You do it with Ethereal Encounters and I do it with ATP. But yeah, so maintaining a spiritual connection. Maintaining a spiritual connection. Hey, Vet Girl, how are you? How Karen and Carolann? It is only relevant when something like this happens. What is a spiritual connection? Let's look at what is a spiritual connection. People think that a spiritual connection is when you think about things that are spiritual, like you go to church and pray, or you think about God, or you think about Jesus. The thing is that we are spiritual. We cannot lose a connection with a spiritual connection. It's impossible to disconnect from a spiritual connection, because we are spiritual beings having a physical human experience. We can disconnect from a lot of things, but never from a spiritual connection. What we can do is we can pinch off our power, because our power is our connection to that spiritual energy. But that spiritual energy is not different to pure positive energy. Some people think that spiritual connection, again, is when you pray or go to church or learn to meditate or read a spiritual book or listen to a spiritual podcast or think about spiritual things. But I remember there's an old saying of a young monk who was meditating, and a boy said to this young monk, "I'll give you an orange if you can tell me where God is." And the young monk said, "I'll give you 2 if you can tell me where God is not." It's like there is nothing that is not spiritual, even when we're looking at senseless murders like what's just happened today with Charlie Kirk. So maintaining a spiritual connection. Hey, Patsy, how are you? She says she's late. We've just started, honey one. Maintaining a spiritual connection is maintaining a connection to feeling good. Because when you feel good, you feel God. Or when you feel good, you feel your source. Or when you feel good, you feel your soul. And you don't have to think about spiritual things to feel good. You can feel good patting the cat, having a joke with a neighbor, feeling that connection of friendship like you and I are doing now.
Absolutely.
Chatting to people online, thinking about ice cream, whatever. It doesn't matter. Thinking about sex. There is nothing that is not spiritual, but knowing that you are more powerfully connected to your power and your ability to get what you want, or your ability to manifest, or your ability to create, is you feel it because you feel good. So maintaining a spiritual connection is knowing how to feel good in the face of adversity, like what's happening now. So Carolann tells me on Facebook Messenger, oh my God, I'm so devastated Charlie Kirk's being shot. And I'm like scratching my head, who's Charlie Kirk? Who's Charlie Kirk? Is he that young Christian kid that's got a lot of followers? She's yes. And so I look at it because I don't really know who he is. He's not somebody that I follow or listen to, but I've seen him online. He has a huge presence. He has a huge following. News people. So I'm not invested in him. I'm not invested in his message. I don't even know what he talks about. And so I'm not devastated when I hear the news. It seems senseless to me, but I'm in the curiosity. Who is he? And then straight away I go into curiosity. Why has this happened? Not like why, like what's, like who shot him and what political party, not that sort of why. The why of what's his spiritual contract. So in that curiosity, I'm maintaining my spiritual connection. I'm not upset or sad or devastated. You said to me before we went live,
I am devastated. I'm sad.
I'm devastated and sad, and you're devastated for his young wife, right?
Yeah.
In your devastation, you're pinching off your spiritual connection.
Yeah.
So
it's true, but I can't
how to maintain a spiritual connection. So straight away, he's talking to me. And he's not unhappy that he's dead at all. This is going to maybe piss some people off that want to be devastated or want to feel like this is a terrible thing or a horrible thing. And I'm sort of scratching my head and I'm like, am I making this up? Because I couldn't believe how fast it was that I was talking to him. I don't even know this guy. It's some, human idea that in order to be able to connect to spirit on the other side, I need to know more about people or need to know him personally or something, but that's just not the case. In fact, the opposite is true. The less I know about somebody, the more connection I have, because I'm not in my intellect or thinking that, and I'm not thinking about what I know about somebody. When I don't know about somebody, I get a stronger connection. And it's interesting, when I don't know about somebody, when I ask questions about them and they give me the answer, then I know I'm connected because I don't know the answers. You know what I mean? That's why it's difficult sometimes to connect with people on the other side who you know really well, a loved one and stuff, because you know so much about them that you think you're just remembering, making stuff up and things like this. So I had the question, now why is this happening? And he came through with such lightness, such joy, such like energy, he was not upset at all that he'd been shot. Like the energy that he came through with, which was kind of like, I was a bit confused about it. And he said, I went out with a blaze of glory, doing what I loved to do, and just not upset about it at all, which for us humans is confusing, because we see, Carolann was just telling me that on X, because I was looking at the search engine, but on X there was like a really graphic video, because everyone's videoing him, of what happened. And she said you could see everything that happened, blood spurting, so we're looking at the horror and going, oh my God, this is horrific. And he is totally ecstatic. So, like, what's going on here? Where do we want to put our energy? Like, what do I want to put my energy into? The horror or his energy of ecstatic? So again, I questioned him, why are you so happy?
Yeah.
And he said, this was a spiritual contract, even though the human part of me didn't know this would happen. And he's saying to me, there was some inkling that he did actually. Oh my God, I'm getting all this. There was some, unconscious inkling that he did, and there was things that happened in his life personally that when people look back at it, they're going to say, I think he knew he was going to die that day because he said this and he did this and he did that and he did this. Like if you speak to the people around him in the last week or so. So there was some unconscious knowing, but not necessarily a conscious knowing. As soon as he left the body, he was completely conscious, and his energy is huge. Like his energy is absolutely huge. Again, I don't know anything about this guy.
Oh no,
So
he was a brilliant man, dedicated patriot, and a Christian. He loved his Christian faith.
Right.
Family man.
His soul is massive. And I'm like, why is this happen? Why would you go out like this? And he said, my message, I wrote it in my Facebook group. My message, he said, will be spread farther and wider and bigger than ever before.
They were already saying that. They were already talking about that. So you're right. You nailed that.
One of the people in my group, because Sarah said, I didn't see the message before you said it, but someone in the group said, oh, have you heard the news about Charlie Kirk? It's very, very sad. And Leslie says, I hadn't heard of him, right? So she hadn't heard of him. Regardless of what his soul plan might have included this exit. I want to live in a world that doesn't include this kind of violence. And that speaks to what this sort of tragedy does when you accentuate the positive, when you look at like, why does this stuff happen? So one of the reasons is that what he was saying and who he is and his message will be heard and seen by people just like Leslie and me who didn't know who he is or what he said. Like I knew who he was. I saw him online. Or what he said.
Right, like Martin Luther King and, like Martin Luther, like that. Yeah. Go ahead. I didn't mean.
And when you speak to dead people, they're not upset about being dead at all. Like most of them, he's not upset at all because he understands. And what is so interesting is when I tuned into him, and I didn't even try and tune into him, which was really weird. I was just curious, like, what happened? Why? Why did this happen? Like I'm asking questions and the answers. And I was thinking to myself, I'm not tuning into him, surely. I couldn't tune into him. Am I just speaking to my guides? And then they say, why are you questioning this? Why are you questioning this? Because I maintained a spiritual connection, because in the moment I heard about it, I didn't go into devastation. I didn't go into sadness. I didn't lower my vibration by going into the horrors of it. I maintained a curiosity, and a curiosity from a spiritual perspective. And sort of maintaining that level allowed me access to the answers. If I had have gone into shock and horror and devastation and upset, I could not have had that conversation with him or that connection with him.
Yeah.
And because, lowering your spiritual connection or lowering your vibration doesn't allow you that access to the other dimensions.
Yeah, that's true.
They're in a higher vibration, a higher world.
Hello, Heidi. Always so good to see you, dear friend. But if I may say, Karen, if I may interject, I think when things like this happen, the human element in us, human beings, is shock, grief, sadness. We experience all these emotions that are given to us by our Creator. And I think they're absolutely imperative to have, because it's a great loss. And when you lose something, you can't just say, for me personally, I can't just say, well, I don't want to feel these emotions because that's going to disconnect me from my spiritual connection, because I know my spiritual connection is always there, regardless of any emotion that I might be having. So it's almost like you need a period of acceptance and grief, the same way if you lost someone that you loved in your own personal life. So that's just my perspective on it.
That's the human perspective. But let's look at this from a logical point of view. So when someone like your husband, I know that you lost your husband and you're still grieving 4 years later. When somebody that is close to you dies, that you have a personal connection with, physically, you can say there's a great loss because you no longer have a personal physical connection with them.
Right.
You can't hug them. You can't kiss them.
Exactly.
can't have cups of tea with them, whatever. Can't have sex with them, whatever. Like, but when, like, let's look at Martin Luther King or Lady Diana. Let's look at
Yeah.
people that are known that you don't have a physical connection with. Is the senseless murder of these people a loss? Because think about it, years later, we still talk about them. We still talk about who they are. We still talk about what they stand for. They are more alive in this world after their death, their tragic death, than ever before. I mean, the people around them have lost that physical connection with them, but the greater public have not. Diana has just endlessly talked about Martin Luther
Oh,
King,
yeah.
endlessly talked.
Yes.
So have we lost them? Not really. In fact, their tragic end created so much controversy and so much story around it. And this is what Charlie is trying to relay this message. Like he said, I went out in a blaze of glory. He said, I went out doing what I love. I went out doing exactly what I love to do, is be in front of people and talk to people and connect to big crowds. And yeah, this event will be talked about years, decades after it's happened. Most people who get old and die, like movie stars, people in the public, they get old and die, and they like such and such a die. We go, oh, isn't that sad? And then we forget about them. People are dying all the time. But this sort of event will be spoken about. And then when you speak about it, it's like, who was this guy? What did he say? What was his message? Can you see how it's creating this, like it's spreading his message? I still don't know what his message is, but I'll probably, after this show, look it up, because I'm curious. I want to know. Like, I know that he was a conservative Christian and he was a Trump supporter, and that's all I know about him. There are other people who would hear about him for the first time today. And
can I interject?
Mm-hmm.
I think real quickly, his message primarily was to go to college campuses where these poor college students have been indoctrinated with messages that weren't, in his perspective, the right way to perceive the world. And he brought that message to them without hate, without bias. He just wanted them to think for themselves, to be a free, independent thinker, and not to be brainwashed by the school that they went to. He was full of love and light and beauty and everything wonderful.
Looking at him, like, as I said, I looked at him when he was alive physically online and saw that he was a political activist and he was a follower of Trump, and sort of like brushed past him, didn't really mean anything to me.
Yeah.
But now that he's left his body in a senseless, shooting that is like all over the news, like, and everyone's shocked about it, I'm thinking about him and I'm tuning into him, and he's massive. Like, he even showed me in the third eye, him standing in front of me in his physical appearance, but like a giant. And I'm like, whoa, that's really interesting, because I have no good or bad on this guy. I really didn't know who he is. I'm in Australia. I'm not really tuned in to, I think the political scene in America is very entertaining, but I'm not invested in it because I don't live there. Even though some people, when I use the word Trump, some people start attacking me and saying, you're on the wrong side of history. Just mentioning his name. I've been attacked online for just mentioning his name.
Yeah. And that's part and parcel to the problem. There's too much divisiveness, globally when it comes to politics. We need to realize that our consciousness is all tied together, aside from earthly things, material things, political things. And that's where a lot of the sadness comes in. And I can't help, as an empath, to tap in to like this global consciousness and sadness, because I just feel it. And I'm just, I have to like work through it myself. Yeah, exactly, Allison. I was thinking of his poor wife, and I said a prayer for her. And I said, I know what you're going to be going through, girl, and it's not going to be easy, but you'll be okay. You'll be okay. You'll, and they have 2 little babies, and it's just,
it's
on
sad,
a human level.
So Allison, for people listening on radio, we have to read.
Yeah.
I've just popped up a message from Allison. I feel for his poor wife and little ones. This is what Carolann said to me also before we went live. they are the ones left to deal. I spoke to Diane after she died, and she was definitely worried about the
Yeah.
boys, her boys. Charlie's little ones are too young to understand. Yeah, I mean, we can go there. A good friend of mine died. I was thinking about this earlier today. A good friend of mine died who was this most incredible musician, incredible Emmanuel Manny, we called him, multi-instrumental musician, amazing. He got cancer and he had a cancer journey. So everyone was prepared for his death. It wasn't a sudden death like this. But at his funeral, his girlfriend came out and people were holding her up as she walked into the synagogue because he was Jewish. And everyone burst into tears when they saw how devastated she was, right? And I was sad too, but Manny was in my head. After he died, he pushed me away physically when he was dying. And he said, I don't believe in you and your spirit guides. And then after he died, he became one of my spirit guides.
Oh, that's funny.
And he taught me so much about life and death. Such a masterful soul, such a masterful soul. I was so amazed. But anyway, at the funeral, I was talking to him. He was in my head the whole time. And I said, oh, look, she's so upset. And he's like, he's not upset that she's upset. Oh, she'll be all right. She'll be fine. She'll be fine. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Oh, like she's going to find love again. Won't take long. And she's going to find another love and she's going to be fine. And he's just telling me about her future. I never told her this. I had an opportunity once at another friend's party to tell her. The two of us were just sitting. I was just about to say, you know, Manny was speaking to me at the funeral and he told me something about you. But somebody came up and went, hi, and took her away. And I'm like, wasn't meant to deliver that message, but she has found love again and she's with somebody else and they're very, very happy, ecstatically happy. And it's so interesting when we see that tragedy in the moment, we don't think of a future that can be better than the tragic moment. And I share that story because although the children and the wife and everything are in that tragedy, time heals all wounds. Like, look what you've done with your life. Even though you're still grieving your husband, you've started a podcast show, you're enlightening many people, you know, you're doing amazing things that you probably would never have done if he was still alive.
Yeah. Right.
So there, you know, where do you want to put your focus? Do you want to put it on the tragedy and dive in down that hole and feel sad? And this is a very human thing to do. But when you are on a spiritual journey or an enlightenment journey or an ascension journey, you learn to monitor your mood. You learn to harness the power of your connection to your source, to your soul.
Yeah.
And staying curious rather than getting into judgment, because all upset is judgment.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm going to repeat. All upset is judgment. We judge good or bad. So upset is a judgment that this is bad. But when you speak to him, like I was speaking to him today, he's not upset at all. And he doesn't see it as a bad thing. In fact, he's ecstatically joyful that this has happened, because as he's showing me, his message is going to be bigger and widespread, wider than ever before. And he will live on long after his, you know, he would have in his physical death. It will be talked about and more people will know about him. And he's not upset at all. At all.
It's sad that some people, you know, have to use violence to, you know, they feel like their voice is being suppressed and they choose to use violence as a retaliation to that. And that's really sad. Yeah. I often think of soul contracts, Heidi. Yeah. And that's what Karen was saying.
What's Gloria saying here, Karen? Is shock in spirit? I hear that happens when I know what you're trying to say, Gloria. No, that's something I felt too. Because again, I didn't try and shoot into him. I just had these questions. Why did this happen? And he was just there immediately with this ecstatic joy. Absolute ecstatic. I mean, I didn't hear about it at the moment that it happened. It was probably about 2 hours because Carolann just told me before we went online, I'm so upset this has happened. And I'm like, oh my God. And I went into curiosity straight away and he was there instantly, Gloria. And he was not unhappy at all, which was kind of confusing to the human me, right?
Yeah.
And thinking, a lot of people say that when somebody dies, you can't connect to them immediately because they've got to, acclimate. They're a bit confused, especially when you die suddenly like that. They're a bit confused, and it's going to take a time. It's going to take a day, a week. I remember years ago I ran into an old friend of my mother's, and her son had died, and I'd asked her months before, have you spoken to him? She was very spiritual. Have you spoken to him in spirit? And she said, no, he's in this period where you can't contact him after death. Because he's, in some sort of hospital or something. I don't know. There was something that a medium had shared with her. So I asked my guides about that. Is that true? And they said, not at all. Not at all. There is no time over in that dimension. But what was amazing to me was the ecstaticness of his energy, like the bigness and the joy. So I'm, in my human perspective, looking at something horrific, and yet he is ecstatically joyful. And this is a hard thing to comprehend as humans. I know, I get it. I can only tell you my experience. You can believe me, you can not believe me, you can say I'm crazy. That's fine. But again, maintaining a spiritual connection, or a telepathic connection, as we've called this show today, is not going into the tragedy and into the judgment of good or bad. Like, this is a horrific thing that's happened. It's all over the news, and everyone's saying it, and everyone, like the sadness after Lady Diana died. I remember Princess Diana. I remember I came home, and my little brother was staying with me at the time, and he was outside in the garden, and I'm like, oh, hi, how are you? And he looked up at me, and the first thing he said was, Princess Diana's dead. And I looked at him as if he was joking. I said, she is not. And he goes, yeah, go inside, turn on the news. Like, he was very matter of fact about it. He wasn't emotionally invested in it. And because of that, I just thought he was just joking, like. So I went on and turned on the news, and it had happened overnight. Again, it had been hours since it happened. It hadn't happened. And all I saw were people crying all over the world, like this mass hysteria and sadness. And I went into confusion, like, they didn't even know it. Why are they so upset? Like, I couldn't understand why so many people were crying and upset. And it took about 24 hours, but it took a couple of days. I went over to my girlfriend's place, Kate, and she was having these emotional breakdowns and wailing and crying. And I'm like, whoa. But that mass upset all over the world. The nun that died around the same time, Mother Teresa died around the same time. There was this outpouring of sadness all over the world. It took about 24 hours or so, but it got me, and then I found myself crying along with everybody else. But the overwhelming thought I had after she died is, why are people so upset? They didn't know her personally. In order to be upset, you have to know somebody personally. But yeah, the outpouring of sadness during that time, I've never seen all over the world. I've never seen anything like it. What are you saying here, Leslie? The author of Radical Forgiveness said Princess Diana's death broke open the heart chakra of humanity. Yeah. Something happened, and I felt it. It was, it was amazing. It was amazing.
Yeah. It's like a global sadness. It really is. It's, you feel that connectedness, and you just can't help but react.
Gloria says here, I've heard that angels dressed as fire. I told you that. That's a story. During September 11, I heard that angels dressed as firefighters were guiding those who died in 9/11. Yeah. When 9/11 happened, again, this shock. I woke up in the morning. It had happened overnight, and one of my clients rang me up, and she said, "Have you turned the television on?" It was about 8:00 in the morning. I said, "No." She said, "Have you seen the news?" I said, "No." She didn't even tell me. She just said, "Turn on the television." So I turn on the television. It's on every station. And I'm on the phone to her watching this going, oh, my God. So, the day was spent watching that unfold. And I was thinking, how can I help? How can I help? And I projected my consciousness, and I went over there with my consciousness to see what was happening. And what I was seeing was, firefighters who were angels, angelic beings that had come into this world and become firefighters. And when they died, just like Charlie, they had instant connection to their soul path, instant knowing. So there wasn't any confusion. A lot of people, when they die suddenly, are confused. They don't even know that they're dead. So a lot
Yeah.
of people that were sitting at desks typing, and then some bomb goes off, and then now they're out of their body, and they still believe they're typing at their desk, and a firefighter comes along and says to them, it's okay, ma'am, or mister, I'm going to take you where you need to go, follow me. But this is all happening in an astral realm, because the firefighter is a spirit and the person is a spirit. They don't know they're dead, so they follow the firefighters. Oh, he's going to take, something's happened. I don't know what's happened, but something's happened. I'll just follow him. Yeah, so this is what I was witnessing. I was witnessing all these firefighters, angels dressed as firefighters, helping people who had died who didn't know that they were dead. And the people that did know they were dead were in mass confusion. And so there was just so much angelic spiritual help, helping all these souls who had died suddenly, go where they needed to go and help them unravel the whole situation. Yeah, it was quite amazing. And I remember just standing there. I wasn't standing anywhere. I was in my consciousness looking at it. I wasn't standing anywhere. Because my question was, how can I help? Let me go over and see if I can help. And realizing they don't need me. They don't need my help. They got this. They got this. It's all, it's all set up. Spirit has planned all this. It's all set up.
Yeah.
So just like today was all set up. That's what Charlie said to me. He knew as soon as he was out of his body, like the second, he knew that this was exactly meant to happen. And he wasn't upset about it at all in any way, shape, or form. Which is confusing to the human mind, I know. So that's what maintaining a spiritual connection or a telepathic is. Our spirituality, feeling good, is feeling God. Every time you feel good, you don't have to be thinking about anything that you deem as spiritual. Anytime you feel good, excited, the better you feel, the stronger the connection.
Yeah.
And the stronger the connection, the more power you take back. Well, the thing is that everything we want because we think in the having of it we'll feel good. So we're looking to feel good all the time. And in that feeling good, we take back our power to be stronger manifestors, or for those things that we say that we want. I want this, I want that, I want this. We have that power and the time space to manifest it more powerfully and more quickly. And this is not a I love that story. Yeah, that was an amazing story. I was amazed. At the time it happened, how many years ago, Gloria? It happened, what are we looking at, 22 years ago. I didn't even know I could do that. But that intention to want to help allowed me to do that, allowed me to go over and have a look. Yeah, we are amazing what we can do when we maintain that spiritual connection.
Yes, absolutely.
So stay curious instead of in judgment. This really helps when something like this happens, to stay curious. We forgot to do it. We forgot to tell people what station we're on.
Oh, go right ahead.
I'll let you do it.
Well, welcome everyone again to United Public Radio Network, which is 107.7 on FM and 105.5 in New Orleans. Where's 107.7? It's in the West Coast? Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah,
it's in your country, honey. I never say that because I always forget.
I think
New Orleans, 107.7, I think, is the New Orleans one, and 105.3 is the Gulf Coast. What's the Gulf Coast?
The first 107.7 is a Gulf. And I think what difference? It's New Orleans and the Gulf Coast. That's right.
It's completely confusing to me.
Somewhere in America.
Yeah. So any questions about it? It's amazing that we're talking about maintaining a spiritual connection, and then something horrific like this happens. And then talking to Charlie and feeling his energy, the ecstatic joy of his energy after he's just been shot. The ecstatic joy of his energy. So here's the dead people happy, dancing, doing the happy dance, and everyone on earth is crying. It's kind of weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just a part of our humanness, I think. You just can't, I would think that even the most spiritual person on the planet, like Buddha, would, if he lost his mother, couldn't help but feel that sense of grief and loss. It's just, It's part of being human. And I praise it, and I honor it, and I acknowledge it, and then I let it go. I mean, that's just how I deal with it.
Well, I would say to you, it was part of being human. I think that as we ascend and shift into a new consciousness, we understand from our soul's perspective who we are and what we're doing here on earth. And so the reason that people who are dead are not upset that they're dead, they understand that this human experience is the dream that they've created, and they're back home in the place of who they are in reality. So, it's a bit like if you're an actor on stage or in a movie, it can be sad when the movie wraps up or the play finishes and you're not acting that role anymore. Like, you can be sad because you enjoyed it. But at the same time, you knew it's not really who you are. You were just on stage. You were just playing a role.
That's a good analogy.
From that perspective, that's exactly how people, many, I won't say all, because there is some, depending on the consciousness of the person. So, right, okay, a million people talking at once. I get that sometimes. I fall over my words because I've got so many messages coming in at once. Depending on the consciousness of the person at the time they died, they will have that instant recognition at the moment of death. And the more conscious you are during your physical life, the more you'll have that knowing when you transition, the moment you transition. Yeah. But the less conscious you are during your physical life, you maintain that identity even after death. And then you need some help from your spirit guides and your higher self and your spiritual team to help you remember that you were actually just, playing that role on a stage, and it's not the reality. It takes some sort of ungluing from the human identity. But the more conscious you are, the more beautiful the death, the more ecstatic the death. So some people that die in horrific circumstances, that are very depressed. I had one guy who helped me with my book, Awakened by Death, who was an astral traveler. He used to travel in the lower astral realms. His mother was very mentally challenged during her life, and in the lower astral realms, she was still in what he called a hospital, unraveling those sort of demented thoughts, and because she hadn't sort of unraveled them after her passing. But and so he would see her as being in a hospital and getting help from people in the hospital. So that was the sort of way it was set up for him in his human mind. She was over in another dimension, getting some help to unravel those thoughts, those limiting ideas, and to realize that they're not the truth of who you are. So you can do that when you're dead, but you can also do that when you're alive. And when you unravel those thoughts of limitation, your physical life becomes so much more ecstatic and beautiful. And, you don't have thoughts like, get me out of here. I hate this place. You're like, you enjoy your life rather than hating your life because you're not indulging in negative thinking. Yeah. What time is it? We've got about half an hour to go. You had some other things that you wanted to talk about. Any questions about Charlie from anyone in the chat? Or maintaining a spiritual connection? Yeah, sorry, Carolann. What were the other questions?
That's fine. I guess we could hop to the life event or aha moment that led you to your spiritual path. Was there a particular one for you? A type of epiphany, maybe? I mean, everybody has a different, then they talk about Kundalini awakenings. And, I definitely had one that stands out in my life that I remember profoundly. But so for you, Karen, there was no.
I've had many epiphanies and many amazing spiritual experiences, but there wasn't one that woke me up. It all started after Mum died when I was a teenager. And I would dream about her over and over again. And she told me she wasn't dead. And I didn't understand, because I didn't understand the whole life and death thing then. I didn't understand that I was in another reality and I was actually with my mother, because it was so real. I didn't even know that I wasn't on Earth. I just thought that she'd faked her death, did an Elvis, as people say, he faked his death. And every time she said she wasn't dead, I'd say to her, where the hell have you been if you're not dead? Like, you've been hiding from me. And I was always really upset. And that happened for years. but it was a slow burn for me. And my guides woke me up from the moment I was a kid, bringing me messages of who we are beyond this physical life. And so many, many things have happened. I could talk about it endlessly, but I want to hear your one that was like the epiphany for you.
Yeah, I've had many throughout. I look at my trip here to where I'm at right now was like a slow burn too, but I did have one when I was about 15 that I'll never forget. And it was, and it wasn't like the beginning of it, but it was such a journey that it definitely took me to the next level, I would say. I was reading a book called Cosmic Consciousness by Buck, and I
At
was
15.
about 15. Yeah.
Cool.
I was already like in
Into
it,
it.
I was
Yeah.
in it. And I was sitting on my front porch reading this one passage, and all of a sudden, it's hard to explain. I still have trouble explaining it. I was elevated out of myself, taken somewhere else. And I felt like I had a download. And it's so you'll have to forgive me stumbling, but it's still hard for me to explain. And it felt like it lasted a long time, but in essence, it was seconds. And when I awoke from that moment, I was absolutely confused. I had no clue what had happened to me. And I kept trying to reread the same paragraph to see if I could get that feeling back. And I did that for years. I kept picking up the book and thinking it was, it'll happen again if I just read that same passage, but it didn't. And that was very pivotal for me because I think the download that it gave me came down to one word, which is observer. And
Mm.
it's odd, but that's like out of that whole moment, that was the word that I took away from that experience. Just observer. And lots of times I didn't know what it meant at the time, being only 15 and still reading and trying to understand. I went through every book of Kahlil Gibran. I'm saying his name wrong. I butcher it all the time. But, and I
Yeah,
was
that's it.
trying to like step into the journey at that point. But like you said, it is a slow burn. It takes a very long time and it's still unfolding. But there was that
I
one moment.
was that one moment at 15. I'm sure that, during conversations you've had with people on your show, you're having epiphanies, because I have,
Oh,
over the last
definitely.
15
God,
years. I think Garnet Schulhauser was the one that cracked me open. Like I've had many aha moments with people, and like just the way they express things. Some of the things are like,
yes.
oh wow, 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 wow. But with Garnet, all the mystical creatures that we thought were myth, like fairies and Sasquatch. I actually did believe in Sasquatch at the time, but all those mystical creatures, his spirit guide takes him around the cosmos in his astral form and introduces him to all these what we have called dragons and unicorns and
Wonderful.
gnomes and mermaids and all these creatures that we've put in the myth. They're real creatures. They're real creations, whether they're living in the physical world or they're in dimensions that cross over between physical and other dimensions. They say that Sasquatch, we were talking about this with Penelope Smith on the show this week, who's an animal communicator. She remembered a past life as a Sasquatch, and she was saying that, she had the ability to shift her frequency so that she could be invisible, but basically she was shifting dimensions. She couldn't be invisible to the physical human eyes unless you were psychic. You could still see her with your psychic eyes. But that many of these mythical creatures have this ability to shift their frequency and their vibration so that they appear invisible to us human with our human senses, but they actually live in this dimension on
Yeah, I
this
believe
world
that.
with us.
I believe that.
And Garnet reached out to me over 10 years ago, and when he was telling me these stories, that was really like, wow, these are real. That was really, I loved that. Like, wow, this is all real. This isn't just fantasy and made up. This is real. And that really expanded my worldview of looking at the world like nothing. Of course, as a teacher of deliberate creation And my guides have always said that you can create anything you think is a creation. Like the Seth book said, every thought you have becomes some sort of manifested creation, which blew my mind when I was in my 20s. I didn't understand how that could be possible. But thought creates. It's just the power behind the thought. It doesn't necessarily create in the physical experience, because the physical experience is slowed down light, slowed down frequency, slowed down vibration. But when you think something, it's manifested instantly in the higher realms, which is faster energy. It's manifested instantly. So I remember, I think in the Seth books, he said, when somebody rings you up and says, come for lunch, and you have the thought, no, I want to wash my hair. No, I'd like to stay home. Yeah, that'd be nice. Like you have a few thoughts. He said every thought you have becomes a decision, becomes manifest. And some people talk about that as parallel realities. But depending where you put the energy and the focus in this dimension is the one that will create in this dimension. So you could think, no, I can't be bothered. And then it might take some energy to go, yeah, that sounds nice. And then you start thinking, oh, I'll wear that dress and I'll put that on and we'll go to this cafe. Even before you've hung up the phone, you've started like putting energy behind the decision to go to lunch with somebody, right? And then you follow that path. But all those other paths are happening in another dimension, but the one we're experiencing is the one we put energy behind. So it's really interesting. But when my best friend committed suicide back in 2000, I think it was, I had an amazing experience on the day that she did it. I was in the shower around 4:00 in the afternoon, and my mother appeared to me. I've written about this in my book. My mother appeared to me as a floating head in the shower. She'd been dead for many years. And she turned, did I tell you this on your show? And she turned and looked at me, and I said, I'm too busy. I haven't got time to chat. I've got to cook dinner, and I've got to get Annika to the school play, and I've got to drop off the, the outfit, and I'm really busy. I don't have time to chat. But that was the day, that was the moment that her body was found. At the moment I was in the shower, my mother came to me. That was the most visceral, real experience I'd ever had in my whole life. And it was funny, I was pushing it away. So I was sitting in the bottom of the shower, just letting the hot water run over my body, just sitting cross-legged, just like taking 5 minutes out because I was a busy single mum. And then this head appeared in my third eye, and her profile, and then she turned and looked at me. And as soon as she turned and looked at me, this floating head, I went, whoa, I just don't have time for this right now. And I opened my eyes to try and stop the experience, and every other sense was engaged. I could smell her. I could feel her. Like just every aspect of knowing what it's like to be with somebody in their physical presence was engaged. And I had this overwhelming feeling of, oh, I remember you. I remember, because it had been years since she'd been dead, but she was giving me the experience of being in her physical presence. And it was so amazing. And I was just sitting in the shower, just like having all these experiences, like these senses engaged. In senses I can't even explain. Like when you're in someone's physical presence, maybe even online, there is a sense of feeling them that you might not be aware of, but it's there. Maybe you thought about this after your husband passed, right? That physical presence. That was engaged at the moment that I was having this experience. And I said to her, you've come to tell me something, but I don't have time. I'll call you back tomorrow, right? And in the morning was when my ex-husband rang me to share with me that my best friend her body had been found. And I knew that Mum had come to share that with me. And in many ways, I'm kind of glad I didn't listen, because I would have been upset that night. And it was in December, and my daughter was doing the school play at the end of the year, and we went out that night to, see her in the school play. So I'm kind of glad I didn't know the night before, actually.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
Yeah, but that was one of the most amazing physical experiences I've had with spirit. But at the same time, Carolann, Mum, who had come to me in spirit and given me this sensation of being with her in a physical sense, was also reincarnated into another body. So it's really interesting that she could come to me in all her mumness that I remembered, and yet she was also living a life as somebody else in this physical dimension.
Did you know who that was, or?
Yeah.
Oh, no
Yeah.
kidding.
Yeah.
How did you
Yeah.
come to find that out?
When the baby was born, it's obviously a family member, not my daughter. When the baby was born, I was told. I felt mum around. I was holding the baby after she came out of hospital, and I felt mum around, and I had this thought, oh, mum's here to see the baby. That's nice. And then my guide said to me, that's not what you're experiencing, Karen. And I said, it's not? Like, I can feel mum. Like, it's not? And they said, look into the baby's eyes. They didn't tell me. They asked me to figure it out for myself, right? And so
Oh,
I looked down into the baby's eyes because I was holding her. And I just went, oh, my God, you're back.
that's funny.
and funny, her parents, well, one of them is an atheist and the other one's a staunch Catholic. Funny, didn't believe in any of this stuff, so I didn't share it with them. And then the mother, who was the Catholic, went to see a psychic. Hilarious, because Catholics say that psychic ability is the work of the devil, but still, she
Oh,
went to
yeah.
see her. And then the psychic told her, they said, oh, your daughter is your husband's mother reincarnated. And I'm like, yeah, right. So then I told her as well, but she still didn't believe me because reincarnation's not part of the Catholic religion, even though the psychic told her, I told her.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we are much, as souls, we can extend our consciousness, we extend a part of our soul into a variety of bodies, and still we can still talk to someone in spirit, even though they've reincarnated and living. Like, we're much more flexible than most humans understand. Like, we're amazing. We're amazing.
That we are. That we truly
Yeah.
are.
So we're running out of time. So so many epiphanies on my spiritual journey. Many, and I still have them. I mean, I have to say, I just loved talking with Penelope Smith. She said to me before we went live that she had checked me out before she went on my show, and she'd heard me talking about remembering a time when I was living at the time Jesus was on the earth. And she said I was there too. And she shared a story with me. And I said, can we share this on the show? Because she mostly talks about animals. And she said, yeah, it's not something I normally talk about publicly, but I got her to share it on the show. And that was beautiful. And then somebody in my group said, Jesus would be a great topic for an Elevate show. And I said, yeah, that would be a great topic.
Would be, yeah.
I've been talking to him all my life, even though as a kid, if somebody came up and said, Jesus loves you, I wanted to punch them because I used to think they were God botherers. Like, leave me alone. Don't try and force me into your religion. Yeah, I didn't believe in the whole Jesus God thing at all. I wouldn't say I was an atheist. I just didn't come at the whole church the way that the church presented spirituality.
Yeah.
And yet I have led lives with him, and he was talking to me. So yeah, we can talk about that.
Yeah,
What's
it's
Vladdy saying?
interesting. It's interesting when you think about tipping points, I guess, in your life that you've had this sense of even simple curiosity that had tipped you over, to the next level, to the next cosmic level even. And I was talking to someone yesterday and I had an epiphany. I sometimes I do pre-recordings for shows for my Friday show. So I was interviewing a gentleman yesterday, and as I was talking to him, I had a moment of a moment of epiphany.
Well,
And
who were you talking to, Carolann?
I was talking to Jerry Marzinski. He is a pretty famous psychologist who actually discovered that many of the schizophrenics don't suffer from mental illness, but rather from demonic, I guess, not possession, but like an invasion. They're like parasitic, and they.
Well, I'll tell you a story. We'll get to
Yeah.
your question in a minute. We're running out of time. I've got 6 minutes left. The
Oh,
girlfriend of mine who killed herself when she was 36, she was the one that was really upset about Princess Diana. It was really weird. The whole thing's really weird. She was a
Oh, she
country
killed
bumpkin.
herself.
Yeah,
She oh,
she committed suicide. She was the one that my mum came to tell me about in the shower. She was found dead the next day. At the time, Mum came 4:00 in the afternoon. It's the time that her body was found. Anyway, which was the time I was in the shower talking to Mum. She was a country bumpkin, grew up in a sort of middle class family that married a very rich man, and was living in a gilded cage. And when she was bawling her eyes out when Princess Diana died, I was asking questions like, why is she relating so much to her? But again, that Diana's story of being in that gilded cage, like having all this money and being so unhappy. Anyway, so she went through some mental depression before she died for about a year. And her husband put her in some facilities. And when she came out of the facilities with schizophrenics and stuff like that, they're not called mental asylums, but she said, God, the people in there, Karen, are so psychic, because she was really, really, really psychic. When we were young, we went to see a channeler, and the channeler said to her, oh, you can do what I do. And she was not interested in being a channeler or a psychic or anything. And I said, why didn't the channeler tell me that? Because I was like desperate to do it. And she wasn't interested at all. It was so funny. But she was really, really psychic. And so when she was in this mental facility, she was like, oh, these people that people call schizophrenic and mad, they are just tapped into all these other dimensions. They're perceiving all this stuff. And I said, tell me some of the stories they were sharing with you. And she was sharing. And that when she, spoke it out loud, some of the things they were saying to the normal mind does sound completely insane. But to the person who has this incredible psychic, experience, they're seeing and perceiving all this stuff that most people, it's not insane to them. It's their reality. It's like this is coming out with the telepathy tapes with the kids, even though they don't have the ability to verbally, like what they're tapped into, what they can perceive is amazing. So I wouldn't call it demonic experiences, just a heightened perceptual experience.
Some of them, though, are violent, and they have predilection towards violence and stuff. So we were talking about them, but we also did talk about the ones that are tapping into the higher realms, and they're hearing, psychic, just what you said. So we talked about both things, and it was very interesting. Who do you have?
On one of the shows, I think last week, we did Peace last week. The week before, we talked about dimensional spheres. We talked about thought forms and spheres, and how when you tap in, when you resonate with the frequency of that thought form or sphere. Was that with you, or was that with Kristin?
Was it with Kristin?
Yeah, it feeds you, and so there are spheres of hate, and there are spheres of love, and and everything in between. And so, some of these people that are called violent and schizophrenic are tapped in to that energy that is feeding them. And that's when they say, I'm demonically depressed, or, the devil made me do it, because it's just like Esther Hicks says, every thought that's ever been thought still exists. It exists, and they group together through attraction. So all the thoughts of hatred and violence that have ever been thought, think of our history, our violent history here on Earth. Like everyone's killing everybody and hating everybody. I mean, all those thoughts still exist, and they group together through attraction, and they create these bubbles of spheres. And if you acclimate to that, you can tap into it, and it will feed you. And you feed it. Yeah. So
I mean, look at the stone tape theory. When you go in a house that is haunted, or there are entities, the stone, the building records the memories. And I believe that to be true too. That it's not only possible with humans, that actual architecture can record memories as well.
Yeah. Vladdy wants to know how you can recommend participating telepathy. Well, the thing is that, Vladdy, we're all telepathically communicating with each other all the time. Seth said that in the Seth books years ago, I read them in my 20s, all humans are telepathically connected and communicating with each other all the time, although it is on an unconscious level. He said, or they said, the Seth energy said, you couldn't drive on your roads if you were not telepathically communicating and connected. So how to practice it is to practice being aware that you are. Like, just practice being more aware. Like a practice when like be aware of what you're thinking, the vibration of the thought, and how you know what you know. And you are incredibly, Vladdy is an amazing young man in Germany who's very connected. He's very connected to his source energy and this sort of thing. And like me when I was young, is eager for more, expansion, more expansion. But that awareness, like notice what you notice and why you notice it. Stay curious, get out of judgment, and notice what you notice. Because it's not like you learn telepathy what you learn is you learn to be aware that you're already doing it all the time.
Right.
You can't learn psychic ability. You can let go of beliefs that you're not psychic. You can let go of judgment that it's not possible, that it's only for special people or demonic people, or, you can't be religious and be psychic all the time. Like, there's so many ideas and thought forms that block us off from the awareness of who we are. But who we are as spirit, as I said at the beginning of this, to maintain a spiritual connection, you can't lose your spiritual connection. You are a spirit. So to maintain a spiritual connection is to stay curious, stay in love, be aware, notice what you notice, like have conversations with yourself, like go inward, take your focus off the tragedies of the physical world outside yourself, and know that this play is all happening for our purpose, to learn how to be discerning and to learn how to remember who we are beyond this physical world. Speak to dead people. They're so happy. They're like talking to Charlie Kirk this morning.
Amazing.
Just that energy, the joy, the ecstatic joy of this man who's been violently, senselessly shot, and he's not upset about it at all. I know that some people won't hear this message. They'll just think I'm crazy because all they can see is tragedy. But from that spiritual perspective, there is no tragedy. There is just the play of life.
I think in time people will get over, they'll start to get over the pain and suffering, and then his work will, like you said before, grow even bigger.
After this show, we've actually run out of time, but after this show, I'm going to look online and find out what he said, because just like Leslie said online, I didn't know who he was, but now she does. Like, I knew who he was, but I didn't know what he spoke about, but now I will. Like, that expansion of the awareness of who he is, like, he is happy about that. Like, he was passionate about what he spoke about. I know that much. He's agreeing with me. He's right here agreeing with me. And now his message will be heard far and wider than it ever was before.
And he knows
his wife and children, although they're in the tragedy, they will ultimately, their spiritual journey will ultimately benefit from this experience. Just like mine did when my mother died when I was young, just like yours did when your husband died 4 years ago. Like, we have an opportunity that when death happens to us, we start asking questions and we start looking at life differently, and we start to expand on our remembering of who we are as soul, as spirit. And thank you, darling. Big love. Doesn't it go quickly? An hour goes so quickly. We got to go. We're out of time.
But thank you, Heidi, everyone in the chat. I love hearing from all of you. And thank you, Karen. It's always such a blessing being able to speak and join forces with you. I love it.
Big love to you, darling one. And thanks, everyone, for listening. Remember, you're on the Network.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Network. You've been listening to Elevate on Wednesday night. Bye for now.